Welcome back to the Hive Doctor, your beekeeping mentor. It's my job to take the guesswork out of beekeeping for you. Today we're going to be covering recommended beekeeping equipment. So in other words, I'm going to tell you the basic equipment that you're going to need to start off with so that you can get the right stuff before you get your bees. We're going to talk about a hive starting from the bottom up and cover every piece of equipment. So stick around. So we're at the part in this section where I'm going to go over the equipment that I recommend that you start off with as a beginner. So it helps take the guesswork out of what do I start with? What do I need? What do I not need? And we're going to do the same thing with tools and the same thing with protective gear later on. So pretty much what you see here is a simple setup. I've got a bottom board. I've got an entrance reducer. My bottom board is a deep one. Remember that we covered that. So inside I've got a slatted rack that I've got to incorporate so that those bees don't build that burr comb down into the bottom board and make my job difficult during hive inspections. First box that you're going to have on top of the bottom board is going to be a deep hive body. Go ahead and choose now whether you want a 10 frame deep hive body or an 8 frame. I know I didn't talk about an 8 frame earlier, but they do make these primarily in 10 frame. Even though I only run 9, that's a personal thing, so disregard that for now. But they come in 8 frame widths as well, and that just makes it a little bit lighter, a little bit more easy for someone to deal with if you have difficulty lifting. But again, when you handle these things, you don't have to pick up the whole box, or you could get someone's help. But start with a deep hive body. 10 frame, 8 frame, totally up to you. Try both. And this needs to be full of frames, whether you get 10 or 8. Of course, they won't come with the wax already on them. You need to, I'm going to say, I recommend getting the deep hive body frames with plastic inserts. And you'll notice they come in several colors. The color does not matter. So it's going to make your job easier, especially down the line if your hive ever succumbs to something we're eventually going to talk about called wax moth. They destroy the wax, but when you've got that plastic insert in here, it's easier for the bees to start over and keep going. So get that deep hive body, 8 frames or 10 frames. Each frame needs to have a plastic insert, and on top of that I recommend 2 honey supers. Now remember, they come in several sizes. We've talked about the peewees, which are also known as shallows. The Illinois, also known as 6 5/8, regular medium honey super. Sometimes you can even use a deep hive body as a honey super. I've done a bunch, but they're really heavy. So I recommend an actual medium honey super. And make sure you get the appropriate amount of frames for those too. If you're going to do 8 frame deep, you've got to do everything else on top 8 frame as well. If you're going to do a 10 frame deep, everything above it's got to be 10 frame. A hive cover, of course. If you're in a colder climate, go with that telescoping cover with inner hive cover. If you're anywhere else, go with an easy migratory cover. They're simple to work with. It just keeps the rain out. That's the main objective, and keeps the heat in during the winter time. And a couple of equipment pieces I don't have with me right here, but you've already watched the videos on, is I also recommend having a queen excluder. Whether it's plastic or metal bound, it's up to you. One's more expensive, one's not. As long as you've got one, that always needs to go above your brood nest to keep your queen from laying in the honey during a honey flow. We're going to cover that as well. So that's recommended equipment. You don't have to have a fancy entrance reducer either. Go with something simple like a strip of wood, just something to reduce that entrance during times of dearth when honeybees get robby, and during the winter months, late fall, early spring, when the wind is still cool. You don't want that wind whipping in that hive and killing your bees. So that's what I recommend. I'm going to list those items one more time. Start with the bottom board. A slatted rack if you're using a deep bottom board, but you don't have to. Some type of entrance reducer. A deep hive body full of frames. Those frames with one plastic insert in each one of them, and at least 2 honey supers. And you may find during your honey flow, you may only use 1 honey super, but it's better to have 2 than 1, because if your bees grow faster than you think that you expect that they will, they could swarm on you, and you don't want to do that. By giving bees more room, we can prevent swarming and keep our bees in the box. And just briefly, a swarm is when bees feel crowded. It's their natural way of multiplying, of reproducing. Half these bees will take off with the old queen, find a new home somewhere else, and the rest of them will stay here and raise a new queen. But then they'll be behind getting that new queen mated and laying. And so you'll just do yourself a favor if you've got more than you need rather than not enough. So go ahead and look at online and order yourself some catalogs from Date Ant, and that is the correct pronunciation. It's not Dedaunt, and Man Lake. Man, those two are some of the primary beekeeping supply manufacturers. I make all my woodenware equipment, but every once in a while I'll get something from one of them, whoever's offering the better deal, free shipping over X amount of dollars. So check those out online, order yourself some free catalogs, and have fun. See you later.